Hello dear students, today we are going to start with lesson number 7, that is cyber ethics. Dear children, I am leaving with lesson number 6, that is cascading style sheets, because that chapter is quite new to you people and it is not possible for me to explain it theoretically to you people. So whenever the school will open, we will cover that lesson number 6. Right now I'm taking lesson number 7 only. Alright children, so let's begin with the chapter, that is cyber ethics. So the chapter is cyber ethics. Cyber means the crimes, or we can say the things that are related to internet, and ethics are the rules that to be followed while using any internet activities. So in this chapter we will discuss about cyber ethics and what ways we must follow in order to avoid threats, internet threats, in order to avoid unauthorized activities on the internet. So computing is a process of utilizing computers to complete a task. In modern era, information technology has affected every aspect of life. This has led to the emergence of a new world economy and has transformed our planet into a globe village. With the click of a button, one can acquire information on any subject. Ethics is a system of moral principles that differentiates between good and bad practices. Computer ethics involve the code of conduct to use information technology in a responsible way. It fulfills the requirements of an individual user without manipulating or destroying the data of any other user. The responsible behavior on the internet in many ways aligns with the right behavior in everyday life. In this chapter, we will discuss about netiquette, cyber ethics, frauds related to e-commerce, intellectual and digital property rights, along with open source philosophy, software licenses, freedom of information and digital divide. So first of all, we will discuss netiquette. The term netiquette is a combination of two words, net, that is internet, and ethic, good manners. It is defined as a special set of rules that governs the behavior of a user communicating online. The communication can be via emails, forums, blogs, and social networking sites. Guidelines to follow the communication online includes use proper salutation and signature, include a subject line, keep your messages concise, be respectful, avoid sarcasm, respect others' privacy, and obey copyright laws. There are certain rules or certain we can say communication guidelines that to be followed in mind while using internet. So some of them, many of them are listed here, including use appropriate language, do not reveal sensitive information online, be tolerant and careful. So these are all the communication guidelines that want to be followed. Now the next topic is cyber ethics for e-commerce. The internet has significantly changed the way of conducting businesses all over the world. E-commerce stands for electronic commerce, which refers to the transaction of goods and services online using the internet. These terms, dear children, we have discussed earlier also in the previous class. This chapter we have discussed in previous class also, but in this book it is given in a detailed form. So some of the terms you might be familiar with that are e-commerce and m-commerce and certain like cyber ethics terms that are quite familiar to you. So the internet offers us convenient way to shop from our homes or offices for almost everything. Good ethics lead to the company providing the most reliable information about products or services. Doing businesses legally and ethically benefits not only the company but also its stakeholders, including employees, customers, etc., and thus increases trust and satisfaction. So following the ethical practices as a merchant or as a buyer builds your goodwill and reputation in the online market, which ensures your success in the e-business. Fraud. This term is familiar to you. Fraud means failure to practice ethical code of conduct constitutes fraud. Fraud means purposefully misrepresenting facts to deceive another person for personal gains. Thus, said gain may be in the form of money, goods, or information. Reasons for increasing online frauds are ambiguity, hacking, and legal loophole. Types of e-commerce frauds: misleading product listing, selling counterfeit products, unfriendly return policy, fraudulent payment, and charity fraud. Now we can also prevent this e-commerce fraud. There are certain ways. They include shop securely, That means we always use secured internet connection and not a public Wi-Fi while purchasing something. Update your antivirus software, so keep your antivirus updated. Purchase only from secured e-commerce merchants. That means the e-commerce website uses encryption control certificates. Check the lock icon is present at the address bar. That means whenever you are typing any kind of e-commerce website, just have a check on there will be a lock icon will be present in the URL that you will open, and it will open with an HTTPS. Keep it online. Never give personal and credit card details over the phone. Read the website's refund policy. A good and secured e-commerce will have a clear and easy to understand refund and return policy. Check the grammar. Look for grammatical errors before phishing websites often have grammatical errors in their text. Do a background check on the charity organizations. Ensures the authenticity and the history of the charity organization before making charitable contributions. So these are the ways in which we can prevent ourselves from e-commerce fraud. Now the next topic is privacy. Privacy is defined as the right to control what happens with your personal information. It is defined as a claim of individuals, groups or institutions to determine when, how and to what extent information pertaining to them could be communicated to others. Everyone in our society have their own some personal information that should be kept unfolded from the other people. So these terms under the category of privacy. To safeguard your privacy, the critical issue is maintaining data privacy is to share data while protecting personal information. The following ways can help you limit data exposure online. People, do not share your sensitive financial information like credit card numbers, personal verification details, OTP, etc. with anyone, especially on the phone. Processes, check the privacy policies of the online merchants. Select the privacy clauses that restrict online retailers to share your personal information. Read the reviews of the online customers of the site before making any purchases. Technology, always set a strong password, update the operating system and regularly install safety patches to safeguard your computing devices. Never use open connections for communication. That means never do any kind of online shopping with an open Wi-Fi. Just use your own data network to do any kind of shopping online. Now other types of fraud on the internet include cyber theft. Cyber theft is the stealing of confidential personal and financial information such as passwords, bank details, credit card details, etc. from a computer or mobile phone and misusing it to harm the user. The next term is identity theft, which means when someone else uses your online identity to create fraudulent messages or commit crimes, it is known as identity theft. In other words, identity theft is a kind of deception, scam or crime that results in the loss of personal data such as usernames, passwords, banking information, credit card numbers, Aadhaar card or unique identity number UID, which is constantly under the threat from cyber thieves, hackers and key loggers. Secure data transmission. Secure data transmission is imperative to privacy and protection from cyber and identity theft. This step ensures that the user travels data through a secure environment that is resistant to penetration and hacking. Following techniques may be applied to ensure secure transmission of data via internet. The first one includes authentication and authorization. Authentication is the basis of access control mechanism which is essential in securing data. A username and a password are the most common forms of identification and authentication respectively. The second one is intrusion detection system. An intrusion detection system IDS checks all network movements and identifies doubtful patterns that may indicate a network or system attack from someone attempting to break into a system. For example, a firewall. Cryptography or encryption, and any confidential data needs to be transferred over a scheduled channel. It needs to be encrypted or coded before being transmitted. Encryption is the process of transforming data into an unreadable code. The most common email encryption is called PKI, public key infrastructure. It is required for encryption and cyber security. It protects communications between the server and the users. It works by using two different cryptographic keys, a public key and a private key. The software applications such as JNUPG or PGP can be used to encrypt data files and emails. HTTPS protocol, this encrypts the information or data Transport Layer Security, that is TLS certificate, or formerly it is predecessor secure SSL certificate. Password and PIN numbers. Never share your password and PIN number with unauthorized personnel under any circumstances. Antivirus. Antivirus software are computer programs which identify, prevent, and remove viruses from our computer. Other ethical issues involve intellectual property rights. As I told you that everyone is having a right on their property. No one can claim that the property belongs to them until or unless a person sells the property to him. So intellectual property rights is a term referring to the legal property rights of a person over her creations, both artistic and commercial. Industrial property includes trademarks, patents for innovations, industrial design rights. Copyright. It is a right granted by the law to the creator for an original work. Here, the rights regarding creating a copy of any product are reserved by the author or the company. That means no one can copy the name of any brand unless or until having information regarding the you can say copying that particular brand logo. Now, the term is software piracy. Children, piracy and privacy both are different terms. Privacy means to hide our personal details, and piracy refers to the theft of software through illegal copying of genuine programs or counterfeiting and circulation of products which are duplicate copies of the original. Types of software piracy include softlifting, online uploading and downloading, software counterfeiting, OEM unbundling, hard disk loading, and renting. The next term is plagiarism. Plagiarizing means use or imitating the language and thoughts of some other person and projecting that representation as to your original work. So if I tell you in simple words, so many times it happens in the class also that if you suppose the teacher is asking for the copy for the correction and you forgotten the copy, so what will happen? One of your friend has given you her copy and she has just removed her name slip. What you have done, you have put your name slip on that on her copy and you are presenting the copy to your teacher as your own. So this type of activity, we can say I have given you a small example. So these type of activities that are done over the internet comes under the category of plagiarism. All right. Plagiarism has become very easy with technological advances like web searching and copy paste options. Most of the critics have linked carelessness, laziness, lack of interest, and arrogance as the major reasons of plagiarisms. Types of plagiarism. Common types of plagiarism are direct plagiarism, self-plagiarism, mosaic plagiarism, and accidental plagiarism. There are certain steps to prevent plagiarism. You just go through these steps. Now the next topic is digital property. Digital property refers to any digital information related to you or created by you. It may be stored online, in the cloud, or in an electronic storage device like computer, PD, or a mobile phone. The digital property includes copyrighted digital materials, registered trademarks, patents, or any digital content owned, invented, or authorized by us. Internet accounts are the contractual agreements between user and service provider. Examples of internet accounts include email accounts, accounts at financial institutions, accounts on shopping websites, and virtual world accounts. Any personal information is stored on electronic devices, for example, photo and video, text, messages, or emails, and legal documents. They come under the category of digital property. Now, digital property rights. We are having a rights on digital property also, and they refer to intellectual property rights given to persons over the digital property created by them. They usually give the creator an exclusive right over the use of his or her creation for a specific period. The law states that the unauthorized copying, storing, or distribution of another individual's digital property is a criminal offense, and it is subject to penalty under the law. Potential threats to digital property rights include intellectual property rights, patent violations, trademark infringements, and copyright infringements. Now, ways to protect digital property rights include technical protection services, legal protection, controlled sharing of software code. Now, the next topic is open source philosophy. Open source is a philosophy that promotes the free access and distribution of an end product, usually software or a program. It may extend to the implementation and design of other products. The term open source picked up footing with the growth of internet because of the need to create technology that may be customized according to the user's requirement. Types of software in terms of accessibility includes closed source, free software and open source. Closed source are the software that is exclusively controlled and modified by its original creator. The source code can be accessed by only the authors. Free software, the software whose terms of distribution allows us to study, change and distribute it is called free software. Open software, the term open software in general refers to something that is publicly accessible and therefore can be modified and shared by anyone. Here they have given a difference between open source and free source software. Just go through this difference. Now, open source model. The open source model encourages collaborative participation, transparency, meritocracy, and community-oriented development, where programmers publish their versions of the software back to the community. The OSI or Open Source Initiative Organization outlines the following criteria for a program to qualify for an open source software. They include free redistribution, source code, derived works, integrity of the author's source code, no discrimination against persons or groups, no discrimination against fields of endeavor, distribution of license. License must not be specified to a product. License must not restrict other software. License must be technically neutral. Now let us discuss free and open source software first. The type of software that is both free and open source software is called FOSS. The term of license for this type of software allows it to be freely used, studied and modified, and the source code is openly shared so that people are encouraged to improve and debug the software. Open source licenses. Open source licensing encourages collaborative participation by allowing third parties to study, use, easily modify, and redistribute the source code. These licenses can be classified into two categories, namely permissive license and copyleft license. Now let us discuss permissive license. A permissive license is a simple and is the most basic type of open source license. It provides the software check usage with no warranties. It, however, requires developers to acknowledge the author contributor. Following are the latest three versions of BSD licenses. BSD licenses are a family of permissive free software licenses. They include zero clause, two clause license or simplified BSD license, and BSD 3 clause or a new or revised license. Now the next is copyleft licenses. Copyleft licenses offer users the right to learn, study and share, modify and distribute copies and modified versions of the software with the condition that the same rights be preserved for its derivatives. The source code files usually contain a copy of the license terms and acknowledge the authors. GNU GPL, general public licenses, are intended to guarantee the user's freedom to share and change all versions of a program. GNU Lesser General Public License, Eclipse Public License, Common Development and Distribution License comes under the category of copyleft licenses. Proprietary software versus public domain. Now, proprietary software, also known as closed source software, it is copyrighted software. This software may not be freely used, modified or distributed and is restricted by conditions by its publisher. Some features of proprietary software are: it is primarily a commercial software. It does not provide its source code. It can be purchased or licensed for a free. Copying, relicensing, and distribution are prohibited. Now, public domain. Public domain software is a program that has no ownership or copyright associated with it. SQLite, 12p, and CERN HTTP are some of the popular public domain software. A public domain software is a free and open source software, can be modified, sold or distributed by anyone, and unpatented and unrestricted by the developers by their own will. Now, the last topic of this chapter is freedom of information and the digital divide. The United Nations Universal Declaration on Human Rights endorses freedom of expression, which includes both freedom of opinion and freedom of access to information. The freedom of expression includes the right to seek and receive and impart information and ideas through any media. The internet has played a critical role in serving this freedom of information, as it defies all limitations of distance, language, and socio-economic status. However, the rise of information technology has generated a digital gap between people with extensive use of the internet, fortuners, and those who have no access to modern technology, laggards. This gap is growing every passing day, both internationally and within the nations, and it is referred to as digital divide. How to bridge the gap? The digital gap must be bridged before it's too late. It can be achieved with efforts of both the government and the citizens of the nation. By the government should conduct awareness camps and classes for the elderly to address their hesitation of using information technology. All the government institutes must be encouraged to propose various computer courses at nominal fees. The government should provide computer and tablets at low price to the students. By the citizens, you can have someone in learning computer by assisting and conducting classes for them. You can also give your old computer to a person who cannot buy a computer for themselves. So this is all about this chapter, that is cyber ethics. Children, this is completely theoretical chapter. You have to go through this chapter